Just read an interesting story on the MSN app. Okay. Um, Title here: Scotia Bank holds customer responsible for almost 20K in credit card fraud. Okay. So there was this man in Vancouver here. Okay, last fall. Okay, he got a text message, and there's two charges. Okay. One for about 10,000, the other one for about 9,000 something. Okay, and the text message, I think it was asking for some sort of password, and then he didn't give it. Okay, and later on, okay, he noticed that there was two charges that was charged to his credit card, and the okay how the credit card works, okay, is okay if they prove that you were very negligent, okay, um, in the use of your credit card, you'll be liable for that charge, okay. Because I remember my boss, okay, the bank had contacted him and said, if you use your credit card, there was a suspicious charge on your credit card. If you use it, you're going to be held liable for the charges. So he didn't charge anything on his credit card. Okay, they were just asking him, where was the last time you used your credit card, and he goes, at a Vietnamese restaurant. Okay, so maybe a worker there, okay, had um, you know, scanned his card. Okay, they made another fraudulent card, and then they started to start charging things up, around the city, right? But um, so this guy here, okay, he thought he wasn't responsible, but the bank, said that he was, negligent, and they said that you're held responsible for this $20,000 plus the interest. Okay, so he took the story to Go Public. I'm not sure exactly what Go Public is. I think kind of like I think it's something like a news agency, but Go Public tried to contact Scotia Bank, and they wouldn't answer any questions, and the news hour also picked up on the story too, and Scotiabank quietly um, covered the charge. Okay, and um, also too, they did even they also covered the interest that he had to pay too. Okay, and then there was a lawyer that was talking in the story too, um, and then he was saying how um, the bank has to prove that you were negligent. They just cannot say, oh, you're responsible for this this purchase. Okay, um, so they're also saying that the bank doesn't keep track of what is it? Kind of like how much uh, losses to credit card fraud accumulates to. Okay, but I think that they should. Okay, I think that's something that's quite important. Okay, because I think that they do, but maybe they just don't share it with the public, because I heard that it's in the millions of dollars. Who knows? Maybe it's even up to as much as uh, I was gonna say if it adds up to hundreds of millions of dollars. You would think that that would, you know, kind of like force the bank to, um, get rid of their credit cards altogether. Okay, because it's so costly, right? And the bank. You have to remember too, the bank has got a lot of power. They can hire people to, try to crack down on these people that are doing it too. Okay. Um, but you have to remember too, I think a lot of these people that are doing it, they're in other countries. Okay. So it's not that easy to, you know, um, to go over there in another country and try to arrest them too. Okay. Um, if it adds up to hundreds of millions of dollars, you think that the bank would just, like I say, just, try to do something about it, right? But maybe they are trying to do something about it, but they're just, they're just not letting the public know what they're actually doing, okay, to try to stop it, okay? But should, set some of their, what is it? Kind of like, uh, because the bank, I know that they do flag suspicious purchases, okay, and if it's in the excess of $10,000, yeah, you have to they have to kind of like call the customer up. It's just sometimes a quick phone call and ask them, did you charge something as much as $10,000? I think that's a big red flag right there. A purchase of $10,000, and it was for a British university, okay, and then the guy was saying, I never even heard of this British university, okay, so why would a person that lives in Vancouver, okay, he has a credit card, why would he be charging something, on the other side of the world at $10,000, right? I can't remember what they said the second purchase was, but it's that would be pretty devastating for financially devastating for a person. If they're on the hook for 20 grand, right? $20,000. Okay. You have to remember there's interest being accumulated on that $20,000 too. They were saying too, the lawyer was saying under the law, they can only be liable for as much as $50. Okay. But for the bank to just suddenly say, "Oh, you're liable for $20,000," and they don't have to. The lawyer was saying that they weren't even offering any proof that you were negligent with your card. They just said, "Oh, you're negligent with your card. You owe us $20,000." Okay. Um, if it's that easy for the bank to make consumers liable for their credit card, um, I would think that there's a lot of consumers would just cancel out on their credit cards. Okay. Um, say I heard this seen this really bad story um, on the MSN News app, that a person was liable for $20,000, and he said he didn't share passwords, and then the bank had just accused him of being negligent and not having to prove anything, and then he's liable for $20,000. This story makes me think sometimes, maybe I should, uh, cancel out of my credit cards, right? If it's going to be that easy for the bank to, uh, accuse the card holder that they were negligent, right? But you can see a lot of different, uh, you can see a lot of different places that push their credit cards. Okay. Um, the Costco MasterCard. There's people at the door, trying to sometimes push you to get a Costco MasterCard, and I've even seen it at No Frills. They're pushing to get their credit card, and Canadian Tire, right? Pushing you to, get, their credit card, right? Um, it just seems like there's a lot of really big box chain stores, they want the consumer to get a credit card. Um, but, I just find it shocking too that, okay, if they're losing hundreds of millions of dollars, uh, are they still making money? I would think so, right? But um, they should, they should set up a department, okay, and try to either educate the consumer about their credit card and just ways they can help protect their credit card from fraudsters, right? Because uh, I was in the bank, my local bank one time, and there was a bank employee just saying that there was some very foolish, people that were um, fraudsters were contacting them, and then they were giving out their personal information. Okay. I even remember a window company, and they had called, my boss's window company, and he picked up the phone. Okay. The person on the other line wanted uh, some sort of was it personal information on his credit card and stuff like this. And then he just hung up the phone. He said, "I'm not gonna give you that," and he just hung up the phone. You know. But I guess, yeah, there's some people that are that foolish. I even remember, okay, there was a story on somebody hacked into this lawyer's email. I think this was in Calgary about 5 years ago. And he was trying to purchase a house, okay, in, I think, some other country, Bahamas or something, right? And what was it? He was in they had, like I say, they hacked into his email, and they said, okay, wire um $600,000 to this account here, okay, as a down payment to buy the house. You have to remember, yeah, this guy's a lawyer, so you think that he was fairly intelligent, okay? But anyways, he wired the money. The money got wired to this country, wired to that country, finally ended up in the Philippines, and then the money disappeared, okay? Um, but I also find it very shocking too that, even in the Philippines, okay, you would think that, okay, if a person comes into the Filipino bank, okay, they have to, prove their identity, right? You set up an account, right? So they know that the money, was it, went into that account. So they know the identity of that person, okay? But he was trying to, put the blame on the bank, but the bank was saying, no, it's not our fault. It's your fault. You were communicating with these fraudsters, even when there was a red flag that popped up next to you, to the email coming into you. Okay, you were still communicating with these fraudsters, and you wired that money, to them, right? But if you're going to make a large purchase like that, even over, I would say, $10,000 or over $100,000, right? Wouldn't you want to meet that person, like to meet that person in person if you're going to wire that much money to them, right? Over half the, was it, over $500,000, right? Um, because I think he knew he wasn't dealing with with a banking institution. It was uh he knew it wasn't a banking institution. It was something else, right? So you're wiring up the money to a person that you just don't know, that claims that they're this person or something like this. They're selling this, big mansion of a house, right? Also, too, another red flag. It was at a really good price, so I guess he was worried that somebody else was going to purchase it before him, so he wired the money. Um, but just very foolish. Okay. Um, so in the I think it's what about a 3 minute video, okay, talking about the story. Okay, the guy who got charged with 20K, he's talking about it too, right? The story as well. Okay. Um, but had he not brought the story to the um, was it to the news hour, okay, or to go public, he probably would have still been, held liable for the amount, right? But he brought the story public. He brought it to the news hour and go public, and then when they start to contact Scotiabank, you have to remember the bank sometimes they don't want that negative publicity, right? Because you know, look at all the other people that have credit cards through Scotiabank. If they find out that, um, the bank um, just, made a decision, just based on their judgment without even providing any evidence, imagine all these people, canceling on their credit card, or maybe even, getting credit card from another banking institution other than Scotiabank. You have to remember they're losing a lot of business too. Okay, and they don't want that. They don't want the negative news publicity. So uh, they just paid the money for them. Okay, but the bank has to realize something too, because they set the house rules too, right? Um, maybe because I know that there is limits on people's credit cards, how much they can charge up on their credit card or something, right? And I notice my bank too sometimes. Okay, they're trying to push me to increase the limit, okay, of my credit card, okay. And I say to them sometimes, I don't feel comfortable with such a large amount being charged up to my credit card. It wasn't like I called my bank and said, I want a higher limit for how much I can charge on my credit card. Okay, the bank contacted me and wanted me to increase the limit. And my reaction to them was, I don't really want to increase the limit on my credit card. But check out this story, okay? Because maybe you have a credit card from your local bank, and after seeing a story like this and video, right? Will it will change your decision in canceling out your credit card, okay? Because the bank didn't even have to, like I say, the bank didn't even have to prove, okay, that the customer was negligent. They just said, you are negligent without, providing any evidence, okay? You're grossly negligent, okay? And that's what the lawyer was saying, okay? He was arguing that, they didn't offer, any proof, yet they were trying to put the blame on this credit card holder, okay? He said he didn't, share any passwords with this, with the fraudsters, but they said you did, and they said, oh, you're reliable for $20,000 plus interest.